Sounds good. Thank you, Molly. Welcome, everybody. For those that didn't join the call a few minutes sooner, Molly already gave away the big news, but I'll repeat it again for the benefit of the broader audience. It is a little bit of an end of one era and a start of another. I know many of you on the line have worked with Jamie Bales and the Great Bales organization for many years. And you probably are also aware that about 2 years ago, Nordic Consulting purchased Bales and Associates. And by and large, as an organization, Nordic left our business unit on our own, and that still is the case today. However, effective last week, the Bales name has now been sunset, and we are known simply as Nordic or Nordic ERP. So that's the big news to share with you today. We're still the same team, same great service, same great people. So there's no reason to fear that we're moving out of the space or changing the way that we deliver our great projects, but it will just be under this exceptionally green color. So if anybody has any questions, happy to answer that. But by way of introduction, my name is Brett Weiss. I've been in the Infor ecosystem now for the last 27 years or so. Some of you may know me when I was with other organizations. I do see some familiar names on the line. I was with Infor for 14 years and then some various partners in the ecosystem, and then been fortunate enough to join the Nordic ERP, aka Bales team, about 6 months ago. So I'm going to kick things off today, and then I'm going to hand it over to Nikki to really take us through the bulk of the content. I won't take a lot of time, but one of the reasons why we wanted to make this transition to become Nordic as opposed to staying as Bales was because brand recognition across the globe with Nordic is widely adopted, more so than the Bales name. Bales certainly within the Infor ecosystem, but as an organization, we do a whole lot more than just Infor ERP. So just working from top left around this circle, the top left segment represents one of the divisions that's at Nordic called Performance Improvement. Nick, if you want to just give a click, couple more clicks too. Basically what the performance improvement team are made up of is strategists. These are management consulting professionals, former CIOs, thought leaders, physicians, clinicians, etc., all of whom work with our clients on strategy. Not necessarily Infor strategy. It's more generic than that, where if you have problems that you're trying to solve or goals you're trying to reach, these are executive thought leadership team members that can help you figure out the game plan to get there. That group works very closely with our digital transformation team. These are true technologists across countless disciplines. If you have cybersecurity discussions that are going on and you need some advice or subject matter expertise, decision support, analytics, business intelligence, AI, that's what these guys are all about. Our group, formerly Bales, certainly fits majority-wise into the implementation and support segment that's represented on the screen. There's a number of other platforms that we also have consulting services built around, especially on the healthcare side for any healthcare customers out there with Epic and Cerner and Meditech, but also a lot of reporting and analytics tools like Tableau as an example. And then last but not least, our managed services group. This is probably the fastest growing segment of Nordic, and we do everything from phone a friend, how-to type questions, all the way up through full IT outsourcing, where we are actually taking over or running the IT back office operations for many clients. Next slide. So with that, If there's any questions, certainly can use the chat window to ask. I will be on for the duration of the engagement. My responsibility at the end of the day is to make sure we have happy clients. And today's no exception. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Nikki. But if anybody has any questions for me, by all means, fire away or use the chat feature. Thanks, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, Brett.
Nikki.
A lot of you know me. I'm the HCM practice manager here at Nordic ERP Services. I've been with the Bales name for I think almost 15 years now, off and on with a little break. And I am still consulting. I'm not just the practice manager. I actually support the consulting team. Plus, I still consult myself, which is where my heart is. But years ago, I started as a payroll manager. And a little something about me, I'm currently building a new home, and it'll be hopefully 30 days to move in. So that's me. And then I've got Candace. Did you want to say?
I'm still working on how to unmute myself 3 years into this process. Hi, I'm Candace. I'm one of the practice managers with Nikki at Nordic Bales. And I also still consult myself. And prior to becoming a consultant 6 years ago, I spent about 12 years in HRIS in a hospital system.
Thank you, Candace.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the disclaimer. We're going to put this on YouTube to make sure that you understand, that everybody understands who watches this in the future. This is just a how-to or just informational. If you have any more questions, go ahead and reach out to Bales. We don't want you to make sure that this is the only way to set things up. This is just a recommendation that we're going through today. But please let us know if you need any assistance in the future. So with that, I am going to turn off my camera so I can focus on the presentation. So with leave of absence, there's a lot to talk about. It gets confusing because there's different ways to do different things, but hopefully this will help you understand what available functionality there is and how to set it up on a high level. And then if you have any questions, you can type it in the chat. Candace or Molly will help me out with that, and feel free at any time to let us know if you have any questions. Setup, requesting leave. We're going to there's some screenshots on the service requirements and how to calculate those, maintenance and tracking. And then there's an option to actually have an FMLA absence plan to track the hours. I'm not going to talk really much about that. This is more focused on leave of absence and how to do it without a plan. Enter. No. So the overview section, what is leave of absence? It's extended time off from regular work. It's just any time that you're going to be away from work. Employees usually request a leave of absence for lots of different reasons: family, education, adoption of a child or new child. Some of these conditions are protected under federal or state laws, but you can also have internal governance if your company has specific rules that are also you have to meet to be required for leave. You can calculate that as well. Some of the laws are FMLA, ADA, ADAAA Amendments Act as well. So those are some of the governances here. This is directly from the Department of Labor website. This is the technical, I guess, the technical version of what FMLA is. I am not an FMLA expert. I'm just a system person. So just wanted to make sure that you knew the definition from the federal government. And if you want any more information, the link is up at the top. So with leave of absence, there's lots of functionality and different ways to get to the same place. So as an employee, a manager, administrator, or an HR generalist, you can request leave for an employee. There are several different places you can do so. So we're going to look at the different places: employee space, manager space, as an administrator, an HR generalist, or right into absence management, depending on how you have your system set up. Administrators can start with a resource record if not using absence. So I have that in here because it's in a lot of the documentation. There's documentation is if you're using absence management module, and if you're not. Back in the day, and it used to be if you enabled it, you had to pay for it. But it all comes as a bundle now. So if you just enable absence management and you're not using anything else, that's okay now. But this will show you the different paths to do it from the administrator or the main functionality HR generalist, or at in the absence management module. So when you're looking at the Infor docs and the helps in the different sections, it's sometimes it's hard to tell which way to, if absence management is turned on. So hopefully this will give you some more information and an understanding of what can and can't work with absence management. So we did talk about the users. There's the HR generalist and the administrator. You can view leaves, you can report on leaves, you can do request maintenance on behalf of the employee or the manager, and then you can calculate the hours and eligibility. And then you can just track everything else. The employee can only request a leave of absence in employee space. But the manager, they can request it on behalf of the employee. They can approve and track. And this is only if your organization allows it. You don't have to have the manager approve it. But there's also in-basket and email notifications for the manager. Okay, so the required setup. It's pretty basic. Reasons, types, email automation, the templates. The two wildcards here are the document templates and the action reasons. So for the document templates, there's an example here of the FMLA designation notice. That is if you're making sure you're going by the rules and giving all the notices that are required by FMLA. And I'll show you some examples below. Action reasons, there's only action reasons required if there's a reject or cancel, not for the other stuff. So the leave reason, they start with the leave reason, but first is if you have a type, so you would say medical leave is the type, and I'm going backwards here, and the leave reason is why. So you could activate it military, you can do the employee illness, family illness. This is the reason why you're requesting it. And you can see on the top of the bottom of this screen and the others that we'll be going through, the administrator path is there, plus the absence management path is there. They are both the exact same setup. One will show in the other. If you set it up in one place, it's very transparent on that those two are the same values and the same setup, just two different locations. So if I have a leave type, if I say it's a medical leave, that's when you would use the reason to say what kind of medical leave. Is it the employee illness or the family illness? So those two work closely together. So we'll review this a little bit later, but there's some new functionality that's been added that actually you can control the employee relationship to Oregon relationship status now with this with the leave types. So if an employee is approved for a certain leave type, it can change the employee relationship to Oregon status. Very similar to if you were to have a termination and you wanted to change some attributes, disable the work assignment and such, same kind of functionality. I think Candace will talk about it a little more later. But this functionality has been added. Obviously, the email automation, this is critical when you're tracking what dates certain things happened to make sure that you deliver the documentation. You can attach the FMLA forms to these emails. So there's one step on the setup where you have to generate leave of absence and FMLA forms. What does this mean? This is the FMLA required forms that need to be created in the system as templates to be able to attach to emails so they can be sent to the employees. So you have to go to utilities and administrator and look at delivered content for leave of absence, check for content, and then load it. And first check leave of absent content, select OK. This is just instructions how to do it. There's an async component to make sure that that's complete when you're done. The validation can be done on the complete tab. So once you see the status is complete, you know the delivered content has been loaded. So like I said, you must attach the templates to the leave reason records that will be used in the leave of absence. So once these are loaded, you have to go back to the leave of absence leave reasons, and then attach the forms to that. Let me give you, here's a screenshot of what you do. So for family illness, you may have to attach one of these forms to make sure it aligns up with the FMLA regulations. You would attach that template to that leave reason. And then these are just the notices or the forms that are created by that. So the example is eligibility notice. So with the leave reason, you can attach a form that says, okay, you're eligible for FMLA. And then you can attach the rights and responsibilities notice so they have all the information that they need. Great. And the last setup that's required to use leave of absence is just creating those reasons, whether the for absence reject and for the cancellation. No action reasons are used to create, update, approve requests to begin leave or complete leave. They're not required. All right, that was a lot. Any questions about the setup?
Nothing in the chat right now.
Great.
Do we want to chat or do you want to speak?
Oh, if you want to speak, please feel free.
Hey, Nikki, it's Chris Ferris.
Hey, Christine, how are you?
Okay. So you got my interest, but as you know, FMLA is never neat and clean. And you could have some people that are eligible, some people that are not. So we can have the same event, for example, a medical FMLA. Somebody based on their eligibility criteria may not be eligible, and some may be. Is there a way to figure that out, or that they only get one template?
So a little bit later, we'll be talking about the how to calculate eligibility. So based on number of hours worked or
You do have that capability.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
I can
My
show you.
second question is about state leaves. So that's federal. And there are some of us here in New York State, New Jersey, what other states have like a paid family leave? Does the module help with the state leaves?
Sure, it
maybe-
can. I think
Yeah.
the eligibility different? Is that why? What's the
It's-
difference on the state?
And so there's a difference of pay too.
Okay. All right. Hold that thought, and there is some stuff that we'll look on the eligibility and I will look at to see if there's anything about change in pay. So let me get down to that spot. When we get there, I'll bring it back up again.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Christine. And appreciate that. All right. So when you request leave as an employee, there's two ways to do it in employee space. If your organization is not enabled absence management, then it would be from one location, and that would be from the work assignment tab, where they would go to my profile and they could request it from but we're recommending that you enable absence management, even if you're not using the full module, and therefore it's a lot easier, you have better functionality. That's how it is for the employee. If you don't have employee or absence management, this is with the administrator. You would do it on the employee record, and you can, oops. And then you can see at the very bottom, there's absences, and you can create the request for leave of absence on the resource record. So that's only if you do not have absence enabled. We like it. It's a lot more easy. It's a lot easier to maintain and better views for the employee and the manager if you enable absence management. And the leave request for there is under my time, where that pretty calendar is. And then you can select the days or day that it starts, and leave of absence request pops up. So you have these three things that you can do on that calendar if everything's enabled. right? This is the wide open view. So if you do not have time records or time off requests enabled, then you wouldn't see that. So that's the leave of absence request from the employee perspective. And it brings up a screen that says, okay, tell me why, what's the reason, what's the type, and when's the beginning and end. And if there is any documentation that needs to be provided, there is an area to attach the leave request documents. This screen is similar to the manager as well. Same detail on there. This is if the manager had to do it on behalf of the employee. So the same information. Once the manager, if the administrator had to do it inside absence management, they would do it. There's absences by resource, and then there's leave of absence down here. Absence, you can go right to the employee if you wanted to do it that way and do the create. Or you could go to the leave of absence section here in absence management, which is a bigger view of everybody, right? It's going to show everybody that's pending approved on leave in history, and you can create it from there. This one inside has a little more detail. It has the initial request, but it has multiple other tabs. And we'll look through that here in a minute. So we'll look at eligibility in a minute. And Christine, I think we'll be getting to your question. So once you hit save, it's only sitting in the status of requested. And then what's going to happen is the administrator is going to want to say, okay, so they've requested it. Are they eligible? And that's where service requirements come in. So you can create, or you can review service eligibility on a length of time that is required, or number of hours. It's calculated using number of units between service day. Okay, so that's length of time. So you can say so many months, or so many years, or weeks even. You can do it by years. I'll show you a screenshot here in a minute. If these requirements are met, the administrator can determine the type of eligibility for which the resource qualifies, federal, state, or province, and then company leave if there's a different policy. So the leave eligibility date and date fields are updated manually. So let me show you that screen. So when you do the eligibility, you can do based on start date, and this is where you're counting length of service. So the minimum service, you need to have 6 months from their start date. Or you can count, and you can do both, and or minimum service hours. And you would have to have a service class in that case. So if you wanted to count hours, even though you weren't using absence management, you would have to have a group of pay codes attached to a service class in order to know what hours to count. So what this does is once you hit save, it does the calculations for you, and it has have the service requirements been met, have the hours requirements been met. And that's where you populate down here. So when it comes to federal leave and state, if they're different, right, you can do that calculation a bunch of times if you want to based on the different regulations. And you would populate this with yeses or nos based on those calculations. All right, I'm going to jump from here, and Christine, I'm going to look in the system here real quick. So that's the eligibility tab. We'll show you the tracking tab here in a minute, which is where all the dates go and all the documents. So let me look at this benefits and pay. So it looks like you can have them in a paid status. It does not. Is there a percentage of their pay that they're eligible for, Christine?
Are we talking about the state leave?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Yeah, that's paid by a carrier when it's not running concurrently with FMLA. Otherwise, they're paid in, based on their PTO. So
Okay.
it gets really complex with the state leaves.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it has too much here. It just says
Yeah.
it says you can log them as a paid stat or log them. Now I don't think it does anything. It just says,
Correct.
okay, is this a paid status or is it not? But it doesn't hook
That might
into
just be a
anything.
flag and not
Yep,
anything else. Okay, just to say yay or nay.
that's Candace. That's correct. You were agreeing with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%. This is for tracking purposes. It won't dictate how you pay in either
Got it.
GHR payroll or
Great.
S3 payroll.
Thank you.
But you can. It looks like you can hook it in with workers' comp. I say hook in. You can track whether any of these are applicable, but they're not going to do anything. Jump back to the PowerPoint.
Nikki, Marianne is also asking, their payroll is in S3. So she said, how is this handled for eligibility, the hours worked?
But Marianne, you have absence in GHR, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so the hours are probably coming over. Now I can't remember. I think we were bringing over the hours to calculate the absence based on hours worked.
So we would
If-
just create like an interface so we can see if the employee is eligible.
So if you're bringing over the hours, there is a delivered interface to suck in the hours into the absence from S3 payroll. You would just have to get that set up to make sure you are tracking the service hours.
Nikki, we don't have absence in GHR.
Oh, okay.
It's through Kronos. He would come from
Oh,
Kronos.
that's right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no hours in your case. There's no hours coming into GHR. So yeah, you would have to somehow get hours into GHR, either from Kronos or from S3.
Okay.
And I can, Marianne, I'll find the name of that interface that's delivered and send it to you.
Thanks, Nikki.
All right. Any other questions? Stuff. All right. When it comes to maintenance, the employee can view the status of the appraisal, but Candace, I think you said that's limited, right? Only if once it's submitted?
Yeah, employees can view a request that they have submitted and those that have been approved.
But if it's been denied?
They don't have visibility to it.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. And the manager can see all kinds of stuff too. The manager can calculate service eligibility. You don't have to offer that to the manager if you want to keep that in the HR and benefits tracking system or side of things. But you can track correspondence, update contact information. The administrator can do everything: approve, reject, update, cancel requests, calculate service eligibility, update all those dates, the benefits and pay tabs too, and then track correspondence. All right, so absences by resource. I showed a little bit of this earlier. This shows the absence plans, time of requests, and leave of absence. You can, let me just show you. So there's two places to look here. You can go absence by resource. I'm not going to save any changes. And this way you go pick the person, and then you can see if they have any absence plans, if they have any time off requests, and this is where you would see the leave of absence, and I think Tina has one. Yeah, so you can go right to the employee and view the status. In this case, it's completed. So it will show the history here. And the other place you can go is leave of absence here. Again, this is in the absence management module. You can see pending, approved, who's on leave right now, and any history. So you can sort this, how you need to. You can personalize, add managers or units if you need to see if to satisfy your reporting needs. And that's what this talks about. The administrator can create and maintain leave of absence, time off requests, and any comp time requests as well. Time off request shows the resource and all of the requests organized by status. Like I showed you, I thought I had a screenshot. Leave of absence shows all leaves. That's the one where it has the tabs across the top. So history, canceled, rejected, all of them will show up out there. So once the service and eligibility has been calculated, you populate whether they are eligible or not. The next step will be setting it to approved. And also, if they aren't eligible and don't qualify, you can do rejected or canceled. So when a leave status is approved, a lot happens. So a resource and a manager and the absence administrator can see the request. The resource manager and absence administrator can update that request. And that those updates are towards the tracking, all the tracking that you want to do, any emails, any documents that you send, you want to track the dates of when those go out. If the resource or administrator updates the request, it is no longer available to the manager. So if the manager or administrator updates the request, it is available to both the resource and the manager. So there's so many situations when who makes the updates, what's available. So that's why I think this gets confusing, but hopefully this helps you understand who can see it when. The resource manager and absence administrator can cancel an approved request. Canceled requests canceled requests not displayed on resource or manager reviews. That English is bad, so please forgive me. The administrator can always view the item if it's canceled, and they can change their status back to requested or approved if they have more information. To change the status. So when a leave status is approved, all the stuff is tracked manually. It's just there's dates and fields and documents that can be put on here and just tracked. So when you begin a leave of absence, you update the leave of absence request with the begin leave dates, and you change the status to on leave. When a resource goes on leave, the begin leave action changes the record status on the leave. So it is an action that you take on here. It's not a status change that you make. We showed, I'm going to go back here and show you the system. So this is one that has been requested. You can approve or reject it right up from here. If you open it up, it's requested. You can do that on the inside too. So I'm going to manually change it to approved and hit save. And then the options now show, once it's an approved status, you have the options to begin a leave, or which is what we want to reject it. But so if you begin the leave, it's going to say, all right, give me some more information. Here's the request date. It's going to automatically populate. The beginning of the leave, this was based on what we put in the original request. These populate from there. You can change them, obviously. Things don't always happen at the times that you need them to, but so it's this action that changes it to on leave, the status. You can't just go in and change the status to on leave. So I'm just going to say submit. And that automatically changes that status to on leave. It populated the dates here on the first tab as well. And this can always be manually changed. They called me, they need another week, click save. All right. We saw the other actions show up when it was in approved status. You can reject it or cancel it. All right, so completion of leave is another action that you need to complete. This changes the status to completed. So let's go ahead and do that for Mayor Quimby here. So you can see that now that they're on leave, at any point you can come in here and complete the leave. Complete the leave, and it brings up a form. When's the actual leave end date? Well, he came back on the 4th. And this allows you to say when the leave ends and actually when the actual return to work date is. And if they need any return to work documentation from their doctor, you can attach it here. It also talks about restricted duty down here if you track that information in the system. Submit. And then if you go back to this leave of absence, you can see it's now in history. Again, if you have any reporting requirements here, you can personalize this list to show all the fields that you need. Right. So Candace, the new functionality about status changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's nice is that you can, so if you have your leave types identified, it might require that you have a little bit more leave types than we did in the past, because then it will change your relationship org and your relationship status directly on the employee's record. It is just a one-way, so it changes it when they start leave. So there's a difference between approved and start leave. It's when you actually move them to their start leave. It does not move them back, though, after they return to leave, knowing that when someone returns or ends a leave, you might come back in a different status than what you originally left for, or even maybe a terminated status instead of returning. So it is a one-way. It'll put someone out on leave, and then once you end a leave, you would manually bring them back to the appropriate place. Now, this is not required. So if organizationally you want to stay slimmed down in your leave types and not do this, you could continue to use it manually like people do today by submitting a change relationship to org action.
Great. Thank you, Candace. And yes, this is fairly new, and you're right. Like it only does it when they go on leave. Like you have to do it manually to bring them back, right? Is that what you said?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. So we're halfway there, better than we were before, right? It's
Yes.
They're making progress. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, there is all that we talked about here up until now is without actually having an FMLA absence plan. The option is there to create the plan. That way you can track eligibility if you want to. I've seen it done both ways. I've seen it to just put everybody in, and then you figure out the eligibility, and you can use that screen on leave of absence to do that calculation. Or you can do it with service codes separately, and you can extract out the hours based on those service codes. There are a few screens in absence to track hours, service classes where you can track the hours by group. So you could actually have a plan that tracks the hours taken on FMLA. This, I haven't seen it in a while, but it can be done. And in this case, the organization can use this to either have everybody eligible or have a eligible count of hours to make them eligible for the plan. Once they have a separate pay code, therefore service code, it'll track the hours taken with FMLA. And then it would have limits that you could use just so they would no longer be getting paid on those, or there would be notifications of hitting the limits. any way you want to use it, you can do it with a plan as well. And then that way you would have to, after a certain period, I think a 12-month period, you would have to restore FMLA for some folks if they had taken it, and there is that functionality as well. After a resource uses leave time and returns to work, the amount of leave that is used can be restored using that process that's in the system. Like I said, I haven't seen this used much. It's a lot of maintenance because of plan membership and how that's set up and how the rolling 12-month is restored. So there is that option too. But that is the end of today's presentation. Any other questions out there?
We've been having some questions in the chat, but I've been answering them as we go.
Thank you so much.
So Nikki, I have one more question. So this is more for tracking purposes, right? To track leaves?
Correct.
This isn't saying, oh, person's on leave, don't pay them. Person's on leave, pay them if they meet whatever conditions. This is just more of a tracking tool? Just to be
Correct.
clear? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's helpful.
Yep.
We wouldn't want to be turning people off payroll if
No.
yeah.
No. I mean, if you use the leave statuses in coordination with it, you could, but you'd want to keep a close eye on that for sure.
And it wouldn't necessarily turn off benefits unless, again, you do something with that part of it.
Correct. In correlation with status potentially, or
Yes.
yes. Yep.
Yes. Right. Thank you.
Well, I am going to turn it back to Brett, I think, here, if I can get there.
Yeah, I think just a couple of closing comments, but certainly if anybody has additional questions, we're doing well on time. As a reminder, there's always Coffee with Consultants, which is essentially a flavor of this. If you ever want to pick the brains of people like Nikki or Candace or other subject matter experts that we have, whether it's HR related, supply chain, finance, technology, click or go to the Nordic Global site, contact, and you can always get that set up. The other thing I wanted to put out there, if you just advance the slide, hopefully a number of you are registered for Infor Connect, which is coming up in St. Paul, Minnesota at the end of May. You probably know that Inforum is no longer, and we hope to see you out there. We'll have a great team of folks that are going to be there, and we will also be having a nice client appreciation event. So we welcome you to attend that as well. And then, sorry, one slide prior, as a reminder, we have the rest of the month of May with additional Informative Friday sessions happening. So do register for those as well based on your area of interest. And with that, Molly, did I miss any other things to wrap up before we give everybody some time back?
I think you did a great job, Brett and Nikki and Candace. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for your questions. That's what makes these more fun, is to have that interaction. So thanks for taking yourself off mute and contributing to the conversation. Any more questions before we wrap up? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Happy
Thank
Cinco de
you.
Mayo.
Woohoo.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks.